Albert Schweitzer once said that there are scriptures that are supposed to explode. They're supposed to explode in our hands. They're supposed to explode in our hearts. They're supposed to explode in our heads. Back in 1869, there was a woman by the name of Virginia Daniel. She was a French woman, and she had that experience. She was reading the parable of the lepers, the 10 lepers who came to Christ to be healed, and they got healed, and nine of them went away, and one came back. And she said, thinking about that one leper who returned, it exploded in her heart. The idea that God in Christ would do things for people and they wouldn't think to give thanks just exploded in her, drove her to establish a monastery of all things, a monastery devoted to Thanksgiving. It was called the Monastery of Thanksgiving. It was in Brittany, France for many years, and her intention was to have a place where perpetual prayer, 24 hours a day, would be offered prayers of thanksgiving for what God has done for us in Jesus Christ. I was reminded of that this week when thinking about 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, where Paul says, in everything, in all times, we are to give thanks. It's a noble thought, but it seems it's really hard to do. How do we give thanks at all times and all places? I was thinking about that when I remembered a couple of years ago being with David Stendhal Ross, the Benedictine monk, who's such a powerful teacher about gratitude in the life of faith. And he said, before we can give thanks, before there can be the expressions of thanksgiving perpetually, we have to feel it in our hearts. He made a distinction between thanksgiving and gratitude. Thanksgiving is saying thank you. Gratitude is what prompts it. Gratitude is what we feel in our hearts. He said the struggle is for us to be surprised by grace. So he did this experiment. He said he was at a point in his life where he was just going through the motions, and he decided he needed to shake it up. So he said at night, before he'd go to bed, he'd take his shoes. He'd take the shoes that he was wearing, and he would do a funny thing. He would tie the shoes together in a knot so that they were connected. And then he said he'd take those shoes and he'd turn them upside down and he'd put them in an odd place. So in the morning when he got up, he wouldn't just jump out of bed, slip into the shoes, and run on his way. He'd have to find his shoes. He'd have to turn his shoes over. He'd have to untie the shoes. He said it was a way of breaking up the pattern. So the question, especially now as we're a week out from Thanksgiving, is what will we do to break up the pattern? What will we do to surprise ourselves by grace? Before we can say thanks, we need to feel the gratitude in our hearts. So what's it going to take this week for you to be surprised by grace? What's it going to take this week to alert you to the gracious presence of God, what He's doing today in Jesus Christ?